My name is Dave Blok. Like Joel said, we've been friends for a long time. When I was in seminary years ago, he was my first mentor that they matched me with, and that was really influential in my life. Both of the churches I've worked with have partnered with UTM, worked alongside them, been connected with them. So we've had a real history and a real appreciation for each other. But recently I've had a more personal appreciation for the work UTM does. So a number of years ago, my wife and I planted a church on the southwest side of Grand Rapids. And because we weren't busy enough with that, we decided to adopt 3 children out of foster care. Their ages are now 15, 11, and 9. They bring me so much joy. I'm so happy they're in my life. But along with trauma and pain comes lots of challenges. And this past year with our oldest was one of the most trying times in our lives. It was real tough. And he was not making a ton of good decisions. He's getting mixed up in some stuff that he shouldn't have been. And honestly, his decisions piled up and the consequences piled up. He kind of hit a wall. He was depressed. If you've been around teenagers, they know they're feeling stuff, but they can't always name what they're feeling. We're like, you're depressed. The only way he got through the end of that school year was the grace of God and us dragging him across that finish line. But in that process, we're like, what can we do to speak into his life and help him? And we heard UTM was sending a group of kids to KAA. We saw my son briefly on there. At first, there were no openings, so he got on the waiting list. And then we got the call after a lot of pressure. They opened up a spot for him. They're like, he can go. But the first priority of the folks at UTM, like Davo and Ro, were, we want to connect with your son Anthony. So before we even sent him away, they're like, bring him over. So I brought him over to the house, and that's what they prioritized. They're like, we want him to know us, we want to be in his life, and we want to speak into it, so that when he goes, we have that bond. So we went off to KAA this summer, praying for him, we're praying for impact. He comes back, my wife picks him up, brings him, he walks in the door, walks up to me, and gives me a big hug and says, Dad, I accepted Jesus into my life. And he was just on fire. Just so excited, so lit up by everything. But if you've ever been on those high mountaintop experiences, you know real life catches up to you real quickly. Whether it takes a couple weeks, a couple months, it hits you. And that battle that goes on in you between the Spirit of God and the grace of God that's working in you comes running into your history and your trauma and your pain, and there creates quite the wrestling match that goes on. And he hit that. But that's real life. And you know who's been walking alongside him? UTM. Davo especially has been like, I want Ant to walk in the rhythms of my life. That means helping pick up kids from school, coming to my work. So when Anthony has a chance to go, Davo pulls him into his life and says, come along with me. And as I was thinking about it, UTM gives my son a vision for 3 things. The first is a vision of Jesus. UTM is all about Jesus. They want to give kids the gospel. They want to give them a vision of who Jesus is. And Anthony says, the more time I spend with Davo, the more I think being a Christian is possible. He struggled. From where he comes from, he's like, that's going to impact my future. But when he sees this, he's like, I can see what it might look like to be like Davo. That gives the second. This gives a vision of being a role model. UTM provides life-on-life relationships and role models. I'm going to be honest, my son got suspended last week. And one of the first calls I made was to Davo and said, hey, can you take my son one of those days that he's off? And he's like, absolutely. So for a 12+ hour day, my son hung out with Davo. And the kid that I sent to go hang out with Davo was completely different when he came home. He was giddy with excitement. He says, I think I have a future. I think I can accomplish more. Because he could see, Davo shared a bit of his story, where he's been and where he's at. And Anthony goes, I can do that too. And that's what UTM gives. UTM gives hope. Gives a vision of the future. UTM stands in the gap. My son has parents for him that are every day there in a stable home environment. But guess what? He has a gap in his life. He has older brothers who aren't there for him, and he has parents who weren't able to be there for him. But guess what? UTM stepped into that gap. And that's what UTM does. They step into the gap for fatherless children. There should be fathers there. And they step into that gap and show the possibilities of what can happen. And I've seen it in my own son's life. And I know UTM does this for everyone. For all sorts of people. Kids who are in greater need than my son as well. And they walk alongside. They invite them into their lives. They cultivate faith in their lives. They cultivate love through showing love to these kids in their darkest moments, in their best moments, and all the in-between. And then they give them a vision, stand in the gap and say, you have a future. And I'm so grateful to have UTM with my son walking him through this. And so I just want to express